Hey guys, I'm with Lori Brant, the happiness coach. How are you doing today, Lori?
I'm doing great. And you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Testing out a new productivity routine using these Pomodoro sprints, and it's been going pretty well. I really like to experiment with kinds of things. What have you been working on today?
I have had a few coaching clients and working on a conference that I'm putting on in May. So
Oh, awesome! Like what kind of conference is that?
it's called Unleash Your Greatness. And it's all about connecting with that missing piece that everyone seems to be, wanting to find or identify, what is it that they're missing. And so we're going to work for 3 days on getting back in touch with that.
Awesome, yeah. And where is the conference located?
It's in Ridgeway, Ontario. So it's just over the border from Buffalo, about 10 minutes. And it's actually at the Buffalo Canoe Club.
Oh, nice. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So is it how many people are like you expecting for the conference?
And we're expecting 200, and it's starts with a great keynote speaker on the Friday night, and then the weekend really is about hands-on, introspective activities and workshops. So that it's not about people coming and sitting and listening to people tell them what to do. It's about helping people identify their own inner callings, their own inner wisdom that's there, but they're just not tuned into it. So we're going to spend the weekend getting them in touch with that.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's so cool that you can host a 200-person conference. That's a huge deal. Is this something that you do regularly?
Not regularly. I've done versions of it in so many different ways. And this is me just saying, you know what? Why not? If I'm going to do it for 10, let's do it for 200. Because in my experience, when I go to a conference for 3 days, I'm totally tuned in. I'm re-energized. I'm ready to take action. It's like I get this reset. And I feel like the people in this area could really use that. There's workshops for an hour here, an hour there. And I personally don't think that cuts it. I think people need to be surrounded by other like-minded people who are just as pumped as they are to make some changes, because then you can walk away, not only reset, but you're also connected with a whole new group of people who are also looking to move forward the way you are. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I am totally aligned with you there because I think there's so much power in being around the right people in person. Like we do so much online these days that it just becomes more rare and rarer to like meet people in person that you connect with, and there's something about making it embodied and like being around the people that makes it more real and just brings a lot more energy to whatever you're doing.
Definitely, definitely. And I think too, the environment, what I love about this conference is, like I said, it's at the Buffalo Canoe Club. 90% of the members actually at this club are American, because I'm Canadian. And it's right on Lake Erie. So the conference itself is 3 days on the lake. It's an amazing venue too.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds like a really good time, like a really good like sightseeing or natural kind of like when you go to a conference, I think you also want to like get to know the area that you're in and kind of experience that, and that adds a lot of value as well.
Yeah.
So a couple questions for you. First one is, what do you wish you knew 10 years ago?
Oh, yeah, if I only knew. I think, if I knew that my first perception of my experience wasn't necessarily my truth, and that I could possibly be open to a million others, I think that would transform my life 10 years ago, and even in this moment, just to be completely aware of that.
Well, can you say a little more about that?
Yeah, I think that we move through life and we have an experience moment to moment, and we automatically are processing it and putting it back in our mind about what it means for us. And after a while, we start to accumulate this kind of filing cabinet of belief systems that we automatically operate with in our life. And they don't necessarily serve us. And so what I found, prior to 10 years ago, is I was not in a great space. And I thought, you know what, why is that? And I tried doing the whole positive affirmation thing. And so didn't, it helped a little bit, and I started to see, well, what am I believing to be true? And when I started to question it, I started to see that I had belief systems that weren't necessarily true for me, but were completely affecting how I perceive my present moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And what do you think was like the biggest limiting belief that you had specifically?
Oh. That's a hard one because I had a lot.
What was like a major theme or like category of them?
I think that there was one. I had this belief that I couldn't ask for help, and it showed up in my life. Big things would happen in my life, and people would say, "Well, why don't you go to your family?" And I would always think like, "No, I can't bother them," or "No, I can't ask people for help," or I'm in a wheelchair, so the universe kind of put me in a space where I generally have to ask for help more than, and it was like, it was really tough. And I was like, what is that? Like, I don't mind helping other people. I move mountains to help other people. So why was I having such an issue with it? So I started to question, my thoughts about it and going back. And when was the earliest time that I could entertain the idea that it's not right to ask for help, or I shouldn't? And I really had a hard time connecting with it. But then, because I believe when you start to open yourself up like this, and by asking the questions, I believe the answers will come. Maybe not like that, but they will. And so I had this image of my mother who, when I was 18, she had passed away with cancer. But prior to her passing, her health was really suffering. And she would ask people to help her, and which, is understandable, but to the point where people would come to visit with her to spend time with her, but she would always just have people do things for her instead. And I think that people just didn't stop coming. So I understand it now, because my mother, when she was married, my father did everything for her, and that was how she felt loved and cared for. And so my mother was looking for that and trying to get that from these people that came to visit. But for me as a 18-year-old, I was observing how when you ask for help, people leave you. Because I was watching how when she asked people to help her, they stopped coming around. So without me knowing it, I had kind of internalized the belief that if you ask for help, people will leave you.
Wow.
I started operating my whole life around the belief, don't ask for help, don't ask for help, and not even knowing where it came from. And then I was like, oh my goodness. So where else am I doing that? And so I just went on this huge journey to uncover what thoughts I had or strategies I was using that were not even mine, or were not helpful anymore, or didn't make sense. And then I started to see that even though I have a belief that it's not right to ask for help, it doesn't make it true. And if it doesn't feel good, I'm open to entertaining other perceptions.
Yeah, no, that's a really profound, like, you have the origin stories of why you felt limited about asking for help, and then kind of coming to the awareness of where that came from and how that's limiting you. I actually had a realization similar this year. Like, I decided to define 2019 as my year of help, because I did a little reflection, and I was like looking at my life, and I realized that like the biggest movements that I make and the biggest kinds of like change towards my goals the progress that I make, it all comes from when I deliberately go out of my way to ask for help. And that's really been the biggest change maker in my life up to this point. So I decided to like jumping off of that, deliberately trying to ask for help more and making that kind of the theme of this year. So yeah, I really appreciate you sharing the origin story of how you realized that Well, what caused your limiting belief? And I am wondering though, like what made you realize how did you have the realization that you weren't asking for help enough?
Um, I'm not sure I can connect exactly at that moment for that one because honestly, I think I've worked through hundreds and hundreds of limiting beliefs now. When I started to understand what they were, and they come up for me as discomfort. So the minute that I have discomfort, so that could be anger, frustration, annoyance, depression, could be sadness, could be feeling blah. Like it doesn't have to be huge. You could just, but the minute I get that physical sensation, I know that I'm believing something that isn't true for me.
Interesting.
Because I honestly believe our natural state is peace, calm, and happiness. And when I say happiness, I don't mean like happy, happy, happy. I mean, I mean like a calm joy. Like that's what happiness is to me. And I believe that that's our natural state. And anything that keeps us from living from that space is a limiting belief. And those limiting beliefs draw our awareness outward, and we start to focus in on the things outside of ourselves, and we disconnect from that natural state.
Right. I like how you said it, and it's interesting to think of like if there's anything that feels unnatural or anything that feels off, then that's like a kind of sign that you have a limiting belief in one area. And I like that it's like you're thinking of it as a physical sensation. Definitely interesting. So question, like what are you curious about right now in your life?
I'm always curious about how I can understand more deeply who I really am. And that's a hard one to explain, but I think that in my experience, it just when I think, wow, this is pretty great, but then you can go deeper. And then when that happens and you get a deeper understanding, it's even more fascinating. So
is there any like books or something that you're reading, like any topics of in particular that are helping you gain these deeper insights about yourself?
Yeah, one of the two books really that catapulted me first was Eckhart Tolle's A New Life. He really helped me to understand that when someone's triggered, that's not who they are. They're just acting out of all those limiting beliefs. And so having a conversation or a discussion with someone who's been triggered is useless. And I started to see that if I'm triggered, then it's my stuff. And if I'm not triggered, it's not mine. So he was key to that. And, you know, it was a bit of a difficult read if it's your first kind of book in like that, but well worth it. And the second one, and I trained with her, is Loving What Is by Byron Katie. She does the work. Yeah, she does the work at thework.com. Absolutely phenomenal. Best thing I ever did. Transformed my life completely. Transformed my coaching. Yeah, absolutely.
What exactly? Well, I know, first of all, so I read the Eckhart Tolle book, and I know that most people say they got into him through The Power of Now. So it's interesting that you had like your kind of gateway into him and this kind of thinking was his other book. And I remember, I think that I also probably enjoyed the not The Power Now, the other book, more than the one that everyone likes. But that's interesting to note. Any thoughts about that?
The Power Now, I think is this, my understanding. I don't know if I've read it or not. You know, I've read a lot of books. I think The New Earth, it was a tough read. I think a lot of people start reading it and it's like, what? So I think if you've read The Power of Now, it helped you with The New Earth. However, if I felt that I taught a lot of like classes on A New Earth, once people got past, I think it's the third chapter, then it was like, okay, we could do this. So it was the first couple of chapters were a bit,
yeah, like a little dense at first, and then you kind of get used to that way of thinking. And then reading books like that become a lot easier.
Yeah.
So tell me something that's true about, like, something that you believe that's true that most people would disagree with.
I think I live on the premise that we're perfect just the way we are in the moment. And I usually get the look when I say that. But like, again, I believe our natural state is perfection, is peace and joy. And any thought that says otherwise is a judgment. And a judgment is a mental thought process. And it's based on comparison. So if I was to put you on an island all by yourself and you didn't know any other human existed, you'd be perfect. So it's only because you're comparing yourself or your circumstance to other people that makes you think otherwise.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, it's like we think badly about ourselves because we're comparing ourselves to others.
Yeah.
So how can we put some of your like major ideas into action? Like if anyone's watching this and it's like, I really like, they're aligned with what you're saying, but they just want to know like how can they implement it and how can they take action? What's something that they can do to you know, like to become happier?
I think the key is to recognize when your awareness is shifting from the present moment to something outward. And the way I have learned to do it, and I feel it's crucial, is the physical feeling of discomfort that comes with a limiting belief or a judgment or a comparison. They will make you feel discomfort. So it's listening to your thinking. So you have to be able to be present enough to know what you're thinking. So that's one practice. And that can come with meditation. It can come with just being quiet and putting your phone away, putting everything away, and just observing what comes into your mind and just bringing that presence to your thoughts. And then also recognizing your physical feelings and sensations based on the thoughts that you're thinking.
You know? And I once again, like I've never really quite thought about it as like thinking about your physical sensations when you're meditating or when you're trying to be present, and like using that as a signal to show you how you're feeling overall about things and maybe what's wrong or what's right. In total, though, it seems like meditation is a practice that you advocate for becoming more aware of what you're feeling and then figuring out what to do in light of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think learning to meditate was crucial for me to recognize when I'm attaching to my thoughts and when I'm not. But for me, meditation is all about bringing that into regular life so that you can live in a constant state of meditation. It doesn't mean that I'm sitting on a hilltop cross-legged with my hands on my knees. It's like I'm you know, very intentionally aware. Most of the time, like, you know, I shift in and out, but it's like, I recognize as soon as my body starts to tell me that I'm experiencing discomfort, it's like, okay, what am I thinking? You know, what's happening right now? And that to me is a form of meditation because I'm not following my thoughts. I'm bringing conscious awareness to my thoughts. That's what meditation's for. You know, to meditate for 10, 20 minutes a day and then yell at people on the highway, I mean, it doesn't really help. But if
you got to put it into action.
Meditation while you're getting cut off, that's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like being mindful in the moments where it's the hardest to do that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything that you want to share that you haven't already shared?
Just that I have this amazing conference coming up, and I know that you're in New York, and it's really drivable, and it would be a beautiful weekend. And also, I do coach training, so I do coach and train people who are wishing to become life coaches, and if they're looking at, and it's ICF certified training. So. Oh,
it's awesome. Yeah. Nice. I didn't know that, but that's really good to know. Is there is that on your main website, the coach training?
Yeah, there's two types. There's a certified coach practitioner, which is a shorter program, and then the longer one, the certified life coach, which is the full 60 hours that you require to become ICF certified if you
Hmm.
choose to do so. Yeah.
Hmm. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again. Thanks so much. I really appreciate your time. And yeah, look forward to talking again.
Yeah. It was great chatting with you, man. Have an awesome day.
You too.
Okay. Bye.